In this video, we're going to be kicking it old school with a blast of the past, back when Nerf was about gimmicks and awesome advertisements. We're going to be checking out the Nerf Cyber Strike Ratchet Blast.
Nerf or nothing. Now it's Ratchet Blast. Fire's forward Ratchet reset. It's Ratchet Blast or find a place to hide. Nerf or nothing.
But this is not an ordinary stock Ratchet Blast. No, this is one that NerfoMania and I modded many years ago. The Ratchet Blast was part of the Nerf Cyber Strike line, that strike with a Y and not an I, that began in 1986 and ended in 1997, where the main focus of the line was about futuristic blaster technology.
Nerf Cyber Strike Gear transforms you into the ultimate battle-ready action hero.
It's the future, it's laser projectiles, but also some of the blasters were wearable, which was pretty cool. Some of the more well-known blasters in the line include the Defender T3, a blaster that pulls apart where the top shoots missiles, the bottom shoots darts.
Become Defender T3. 3-in-1 system clips to belt for rapid activation. Converts to Cyber Bow and Battle Blaster.
It also has a belt clip, which was revolutionary for the time, and it got a pretty big following in the modding scene for being easy to mod with some good gains to it. Another blaster is the Collin Blank 2. Two pistols that also have a walkie-talkie in them.
A cool set of two combination blaster walkie-talkies. Stay left. Got him.
No idea how well they did in an actual scenario, but pretty cool concept. I wish I had a working pair so I could test it out. And the Perceptor, a chest and head rig that turns you into a Nerf equivalent of the Terminator.
Engage Perceptor. Tracking gear adapts for multi-directional targeting.
And when you combine a bunch of the blasters together, you get this kid. This kid is awesome, and he's totally gonna steal your girlfriend with all this Nerf gear. This kid rules. Unlike my Ratchet Blast, a stock Ratchet Blast came with a hand shield on the back here that would fit over these little nubs that also doubled as an ammo storage area. Now, even as a kid, I never liked the hand shield, so if I had one now, I would still be taking it off. It would dig into your wrist. It was just really small, so if you had bigger hands, it would kind of flex the plastic out. And I don't really know what the point of it was. Maybe it was supposed to be like, oh, your hand's a cyborg now. Or maybe Nerf thought you were supposed to Wonder Woman deflect darts away or something. But I never liked it, so yeah, whatever. But the main selling point of this blaster wasn't the hand shield. It was the way this blaster primed and fired. If you've ever played with a Boomco Whip Blast, you know all about this blaster already. The way it works is you would hold it right here, and you would break the blaster to prime it, flip it back up into this position where it would lock in place, and then you would fire it. And I'm going to cover this because it doesn't have any sort of AR and it sounds awful and I don't want to break the blaster. So yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it, except I never did it that way. I was the cool kid who did this. That was the original way of doing your Ratchet Blast, like the Terminator-esque sort of flip prime, and man, it was a lot of fun to do that. You just do it like that, though it will sometimes fire, as you just heard, if you did it too hard. But that was the cool way of priming it. Like I said, back in the day, NerfoMania and I did mod this up, with this being kind of like one of my first steps into vintage modding, with NerfoMania leading the way, following Dizzy Duck's guide on Nerf Haven, which goes over beefing up some of the more important areas of this blaster, which I'll tell you why that's important later. But the mods are very simple, with the first one being adding epoxy putty to this area of the grip. The plastic around here gets pretty thin, and with the Ratchet Blast, you want to beef up the thinner areas as best as you can without it interfering with the rest of the functioning of the blaster. So some epoxy putty right here really helps it out. It gets rid of some of the creak, it helps with the thinner area. And another mod we did, which also beefs up some of the internals, is we added a piece of brass tubing and epoxy putty to the plunger rod. The plunger rod has a big groove cut into it, so it becomes like a little U or C channel. So you just sand the crap out of it, you put a piece of metal into it, and then you use either liquid epoxy or epoxy putty to fill it in to strengthen it up. We also did two mods that don't follow Dizzy Duck's guides that I also think are pretty important for the Ratchet Blast. The first one addresses an issue that happens over time where you wear down the little piece right in the sight that goes into the groove right here on the blaster that keeps the blaster up in place after you prime it. It has a little bit of play, but if you fire it enough, the plastic will start to wear down, and eventually when it gets into this position, any sort of movement will cause it to fall back out, and then, you know, you can't really fire a blaster like this, and it's kind of worthless. The way I attacked this problem was by taking a razor blade and shaving out the groove over here so it has a steeper attack angle at the front, and by using the razor blade to sharpen the point at the bottom of the piece in the sight. And what this does is it just makes the channel deeper and harder for that piece to get out of, so it has a bit more strength to it. As you can see, you can kind of wobble this around, it's not gonna fall out. And trust me, this would be way big of a problem if you didn't do this mod after a bit of time. So it might be harder to flick out of place, but it's definitely a mod that's worth doing, even if you have to prime it like so. And the last mod we did, which should come as no surprise to anyone who's ever done vintage Nerf modding, we added some 17/32 brass to the barrels. You just take a length of brass, you wrap 2 bits of E-tape around it until it's a nice little friction fit into the barrel, add a bunch of goop onto the barrel, shove it in, and you're done. And now your old school blaster can shoot your elite size darts, because what would be the point of modding this thing up if you can't shoot the darts that you already have? Now I can hear you saying, Bobo, enough talking, how well does it shoot? How does it compare to new blasters? Well, let's go find out by taking it outside and shooting it. I did go back in and lubricate everything back up with some dry silicone lube on the plastic bits and re-lubing the plunger tube because it needed it after all these years. But let's go see how well it holds up compared to things nowadays. So there you go, an old mod that NerfoMania and I did back in the day. Now, if you're interested in picking up a Ratchet Blast for yourself and modifying it, there are a few things you should know before you click that buy button. Number one is that the plastic on the Ratchet Blast is pretty weak, especially around the area that actually pulls the plunger rod back. Lots of Ratchet Blasts get these big cracks right over there, and they can still work, but you're really compromised if that happens, because if the crack is bad enough, it won't work very well, and you might as well just throw the blaster away, at least from my experience. The second part is because of the way the blaster works and because of how the plastic is, I would not add a beefier spring to this, maybe just slightly stronger than stock, but I think the original spring is just fine. If you put a bigger spring into this, you are really upping the chance of this thing just killing itself. So be very careful with what springs you put into your Ratchet Blast. And the third is that one hand flipping your Ratchet Blast is a gamble every single time. Not only because of the stress on the way that it works, but also because of the downforce when it gets to the bottom right here. You're putting a lot of pressure into that part of the prime. Also, with the piece up here and the way it locks in there, you're wearing it down every time you do it. Basically every time you prime it, you're wearing this piece down, so you might have to go in and reshave that part until it just breaks entirely. Basically, the Ratchet Blast is a blaster that tries to kill itself every time you use it, so if you think about buying one, be very careful with it. And definitely do the reinforcement mods. Maybe there are some things that you could do to it that aren't discussed in Nerf Haven that will up the lifespan of this blaster. But overall, this blaster is pretty darn cool, and I think it's something that vintage collectors or people who are even remotely interested in vintage blasters should pick up, because it's a lot of fun. Whipping it around, though a gamble every time, is a lot of fun to do. The mods are very simple to it. It's an easy-ish blaster to take apart, though the springs do tend to kind of fly out, and the catch spring area will break over time, so it will really not want to get into place. Highly recommend super gluing that in. But it's a fun blaster. It's probably a cheap blaster to find if there are some easily available out there. And I do like that I have a modified one just to bring out every now and then and go, woo, you know. There you go, an old mod that NerfoMania and I did way back in the day. Still have it, still gonna keep it. Lots of fun. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a great day wherever you are. Here's what it sounds like when you don't cover it.